From ominous prophecies to eerie premonitions, these bone-chilling tales will leave you with goosebumps. Get ready for a chilling journey into the unknown as we count down the top 10 chilling warnings. There's a lot of chillings in this. The top 10 chilling warnings from the past that will give you goosebumps. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the security update. After the day of the September 11th attacks in 2001, airport security changed forever. There are many changes that have come since, but the most obvious one, of course, is all of the security measures that now take place. It's truly for the best, but it came out of absolute tragedy. One of the many security measures that was implemented was the installation of the cockpit being able to lock from the inside. This, of course, was to prevent any intruders from being able to take control of the plane. Unfortunately, however, people have used this security update to their advantage and have used it to harm people. In 2015, a German pilot locked his co-pilot out of the cockpit and then hijacked his own plane and crashed it into the French Alps because he wanted to take his own life. This is a terribly sad and tragic situation, and unfortunately just 2 months prior, someone had actually predicted this terrible outcome. A pilot by the name of Jan Crockett predicted that this new security system, which of course had only the best intentions, could ultimately prove worse for the pilot. He apparently said, quote, "I seriously wonder who's sitting next to me. I hope I never find myself in this situation where I go to the toilet and return to find a cockpit door that won't open." That is an absolutely terrifying thought, and it's eerie that the quote came just before that horrible situation. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Deniers. World War II is an extremely dark spot in terms of human history, and thankfully some people had the foresight before it even ended to know that there would be people who would later try and deny the atrocities that occurred. When the Allies invaded mainland Europe near the end of the war, the supreme leader of the Allied forces and future US President, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, and his troops went through the concentration camps that at the time people had only heard of, but they truly had no idea what was waiting for them. The reason they did this was because Eisenhower knew that if he were ever to be in the position where someone was trying to deny anything, he would be able to give his first-hand recount of the horrors he witnessed. If anyone wanted to try and twist the truth, he would be able to set it straight, and as soon as he saw what was really inside of the camps, he immediately called London and New York and asked them to send as many journalists and photographers as possible so that everyone would know exactly what happened inside of the camps. Unfortunately, he was right, and people did try to deny or twist the truths in order to escape punishment, but the world already knew the truth. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Prophetic Dreams. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, is known not only for his leadership during the turbulent times of the American Civil War, but also for his purported prophetic dreams. According to historical accounts, Lincoln experienced a series of vivid and prophetic dreams throughout his life, with one dream in particular standing out due to its very chilling nature and its connection to his assassination. The most famous dream attributed to Lincoln occurred in the weeks leading up to his assassination in April 1865. In this dream, Lincoln reportedly saw himself walking through the White House, hearing mournful sounds emanating from a room. He followed the sounds and discovered a catafalque surrounded by mourners. When Lincoln inquired about the identity of the deceased, a soldier replied that it was the president who had been assassinated. The dream left Lincoln deeply disturbed and filled with a sense of impending doom. These prophetic dreams had a profound impact on Lincoln's belief in the supernatural and the power of premonitions. He regarded these dreams as significant omens and often discussed them with his close associates, attributing them to a higher power or divine intervention. Lincoln's fascination with the supernatural and his openness to the influence of his dreams added a very eerie element to his presidency and fueled speculation about his mystical inclinations. The fact that Lincoln's dream about his assassination seemed to foreshadow the tragic event that unfolded at Ford's Theater on April 14, 1865, adds a very haunting dimension to his prophetic experiences. The dreams of Abraham Lincoln have captured the imagination of many and have become quite an intriguing aspect of his life and his legacy. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Great Fire of London. When it comes to predictions, Nostradamus is one of the most prominent names that comes up. It is said that he was able to predict a whole slew of things before they happened, and while some predictions might be a little murkier than others, one prediction was quite terrifying terrifyingly accurate. One of his predictions in his book of prophecies said, quote, "The blood of the just will be lacking in London, burnt up in the fire of 66. The ancient lady will topple from her high place. Many of the same sect will be killed." This book was written in 1555, so imagine everyone's horror when the Great London Fire happened in 1666. From September 2nd to the 5th of that year, London was engulfed by fire and it absolutely decimated the city. 13,000 homes were destroyed, along with landmarks like St. Paul's Cathedral. As it turns out, this Nostradamus prediction may have been more accurate than any of us are really comfortable with. It's really just the accurate year that gets me really creeped out. In our number 6 spot today, we have The Warning. On Tuesday, January 28th, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger launched on live TV, but just 73 seconds into its flight, it disastrously disintegrated, taking the lives of all 7 people on board, which included high school teacher Krista McAuliffe, who was going to be the first non-military civilian in space due to the Teacher in Space program. Of course, investigations were immediately launched to figure out how this could have happened and what exactly went wrong. In fact, the president at the time, Ronald Reagan, appointed a special commission to investigate the causes, and as it turns out, the investigation report revealed that the disaster was, quote, "an accident rooted in history." This basically confirmed that NASA had previously known about the problems that led to the destruction of the Challenger and the subsequent demise of the crew. The least surprised of all was perhaps engineer Robert Boyce-Joly, who apparently sent an inter-office memo months prior to the tragedy warning of the exact fate the Challenger would meet should they continue to choose to launch the shuttle in such cold weather. Quote, "The result would be catastrophic of the highest order," he wrote. Quote, "loss of human life." In our number 5 spot today, we have the Chernobyl Warning. The Chernobyl disaster of 1986 was one of the most devastating nuclear accidents in history, with far-reaching consequences for the environment and for human health. In the period leading up to the catastrophe, there were accounts of strange occurrences and eerie phenomena that some locals interpreted as warnings of the impending disaster. Reports of unusual animal behavior were among the early signs observed by those living in the vicinity of the Chernobyl power plant. Animals were said to be acting strangely, fleeing the area, or exhibiting signs of distress. In addition to the abnormal animal behaviors, there were also accounts of visions and dreams experienced by some residents. People reported having vivid and unsettling dreams, often featuring images of catastrophe, destruction, and impending doom. Some even claimed to have had premonitions or visions related to the Chernobyl disaster, adding to the growing sense of unease and foreboding. These various reports of unusual animal behavior, visions, and dreams created a very eerie atmosphere in the region leading up to the Chernobyl disaster. While these warnings may not have been fully understood or heeded at the time, they add another layer of mystery and intrigue to the tragic events that unfolded in Chernobyl in 1986. In our number 4 spot today, we have the stone tablets. Japan is located in an area of the world that is geographically constantly volatile. I mean, the area is known as the Ring of Fire, and the residents of Japan are certainly no strangers to destructive earthquakes and, considering the whole island thing, subsequently devastating tsunamis as well. Throughout the years and through a sort of trial and error scenario, residents of Japan in history have tried to warn about the volatile conditions with stone tablets. The tablets have engravings in them that warn any future occupant of the island not to build anything below a certain point. I love this because I think it's the sweetest thing that people of the past wanted to help out all of the people to come. I don't know, I don't feel like I have that kind of camaraderie with anyone, even the people I work with, let alone people who don't even exist yet. I love to see it. These stone tablets were quite impressive as well, with some towering over 10 feet tall, and they date back as early as the 6th century, which makes them an awesome but very eerie part of history. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Titanic. We have all heard about the Titanic and the tragedy that ensued when, in 1912, it struck an iceberg and began to sink as a result. 1,517 people died in the ice waters following this incident. What if I told you that there was an eerie prediction that predated the Titanic's debut sail? In 1898, Morgan Robertson's book Futility was published, also known as The Wreck of the Titan. Would you believe that the premise of this story is about an apparently unsinkable boat that is called the Titan that ends up sinking after hitting an iceberg? Like, for real, the Titan and the Titanic. Unsinkable, but ends up sinking after striking an iceberg. It's almost too much. Turns out this was simply just pure coincidence, and apparently the author was an experienced sailor, and as he saw ships getting larger and larger, he figured it was just a matter of time before one of the large vessels came into contact with an exceptionally dangerous situation like the one he wrote about. In our number 2 spot today, we have the atomic bomb. It wasn't until 1945 when the very first atomic bomb was dropped, and that was on Hiroshima, Japan on August 6th of that year, with the second one coming just a few days later over Nagasaki. Until those at the Manhattan Project really started to create these weapons of mass destruction, we could never have dreamed of something so destructive, powerful, and terrifying. Well, unless you're H.G. Wells, of course. In his 1914 novel, The World Set Free, Wells details the disaster that follows an atomic explosion. Wells used known scientific facts at the time to inform his novel, but at the time it was written, no one knew about the power that had yet to be created. He wrote about the power of this futuristic weapon and said, quote, "Perished museums, cathedrals, palaces, libraries, galleries of masterpieces, and a vast accumulation of human achievement whose charred remains lie buried." It wasn't until 30 years later that this type of power would actually come to fruition, and now, over 100 years after the book was written, atomic and nuclear power are a topic of everyday conversation. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have James Dean. James Dean is one of Hollywood's most famous actors ever, despite his very untimely death when he was just 24 years old. On September 30th, 1955, James was speeding in his Porsche 550 Spyder when he unfortunately crashed into another car traveling the opposite direction and lost his life. This is a very terrible and very tragic story, and here's where the eerie prediction part comes in. Just 7 days before his death, James met with celebrated actor Alec Guinness to show off his new car. Alec apparently just suddenly had a terribly dark feeling, and he told James, "Please do not get into that car, because if you do, by 10 o'clock at night next Thursday, you'll be dead." This means that somehow he not only predicted James' imminent death, but also the exact day it would occur on. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!